Hello, world, and welcome back to the Simple Sports Podcast. It is I, your host, Capo, and this is episode 1. Episode 1, the 2020 NFL season is just days away. Thursday at time of recording is Tuesday, so we got 2 days until kickoff. Try saying that a few times. Houston and Kansas City. Can't wait to talk about fantasy football. On Thursday, I will be doing a podcast about daily fantasy strategy, not only for the upcoming Sunday, but also for the Houston-Kansas City showdown on Thursday night. So if you're interested in that, look out for that. It'll be out probably, it'll definitely be out a few hours before kickoff. So look out for that. NBA is kicked off. We'll talk about the NBA bubble in episode 2 a little bit as well, maybe episode 3. But today, we are all in on football. But just before we do football, we got a little bit of house cleaning to do, just a little bit. First thing, check out the website, thesimplesport.com. The link will also be in the description if you're listening to this on YouTube. If you are elsewhere, if there is some sort of description available, it should be in there. Otherwise, it's pretty easy, thesimplesport.com. Check it out. We got a new design. NFL power rankings are up. A couple of blog posts on Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. And we'll continue to ramp that content up as we progress into the season. I've been putting it off, but it's go time. So here we go. And that's it for the house cleaning. There you go. Painless. Now let's get to some football. All right. So on today's podcast, what are we looking for to start the NFL season? There's a lot of things I'm interested in. Okay. First, NFL with no fans. How is that going to work? How will that impact the play on the field? I don't know about you guys, but you can sit at home and watch the Chiefs and the Saints in the playoffs, and you can feel it through the TV. And it doesn't have to be playoffs. You can feel that kind of energy any time of the year. Same thing with Seattle. They no longer have that home field advantage, at least as of right now. That is the plan. I'm assuming that's going to carry on through the season. We don't know how things are going to ultimately play out. Who knows? Maybe they relax things even more in the future, but whatever, you get the point. It's going to be a big deal. And when crowds like that get going, it's tough to communicate audibles and shifts. If you're in the secondary, you got to rotate your coverages, calling plays. We saw Jared Goff have to cover his ears in that playoff game a few years back against the Saints. Getting the snap count even can be a big deal. So momentum is going to be... It's going to be interesting to see how that carries through the game. When the Texans were up on the Chiefs and they got those first couple of scores and those first couple of big plays, they start to come back. You could feel it through the TV. Same thing we're seeing in the NBA bubble. There is no home court advantage. And so you're seeing, I think, somewhat of an impact. I'm not saying it's the difference in the game, but you definitely see the impact. So I'm anxious to see how that impacts the football we see as well. No off season, which isn't, I guess, technically correct. There is an off season, but it's been vastly different, obviously, from what we're all used to. Obviously, the COVID issues have led to all this, and so a lot of the off season fine tuning isn't what it usually is. Say what you want about preseason football, but it is necessary to some level. Football is a tough sport, is a grinding sport. And it is very tough to go from just practicing, even if you're going full go at practice, to go to games that matter. It is a big, big difference. And it makes flushing out your roster a little bit easier, once you get to see guys go full go. So my guess is we're going to get a bunch of games this first week or two, that are on both extremes. And what I mean is you're going to see a lot of games that are either blowouts, 45-10, 35-3, whatever, something like that, or just high scoring in general. You might get a couple of 35-38 games, 40-42, whatever. And then you're going to see on the other extreme, teams that just can't quite get it together coming out of the gate, stumbling 10-13, Steelers, Ravens, Titans, Jags type deals. But I doubt we'll see very much in between. I don't think what's going to happen is the teams that are coming back with a lot of their core are going to be a lot more in tune than teams that have to play a little bit of catch up. So I think you're going to see a lot of sloppy football, at least in the first week or two. Don't let that impact what you think of a team, though. and I'll get to that in a little bit. Another thing, how will rookies perform versus the vets, right? You got a lot of rookies coming in. Drafting rookies is a tricky process, and we've seen so many guys come and go that are supposed to be the next whoever to take over, and often it's guys you never see coming, unless you're a true football nerd. You didn't really know who Quentin Nelson and Darius Leonard were until you saw them on NFL Sundays. That they weren't household names. I'm talking about the football nerds. There are a lot of people, of course, that knew who both those guys were, but like I would say the average NFL fan, like those guys were total surprises. Same thing with a guy like AJ Brown, even, who to most was just a guy that played behind DK Metcalf, who was not considered agile enough, not a great route runner. So even the guy that they thought wasn't as good as they thought he was going to be in DK Metcalf, his quote unquote Robin, if you will, AJ Brown, was even farther down the totem pole, and both of them turned out to be excellent rookie receivers. So remember Rashawn Gary out of Michigan, 2 sacks, 13 solo tackles last year. So it's, rookies, we all know this. The draft is obviously not a science. It is like cooking. You got to throw some stuff together, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll see. But the question we have to ask is, for this year, who got the gems, right? We've seen guys like a Marshawn Lattimore, like I said, a Quentin Nelson, guys like that. And the question is, will they be able to perform at the same level in this non-conventional introduction to the NFL, and vice versa, or perhaps to their benefit? Will NFL teams be able to prepare for guys like this that, in the preseason, you would get at least some film on these guys, and now you're getting nothing. So maybe it swings in the rookie's favor in a lot of cases. It's possible that it doesn't. It's possible. I think it's more likely that more rookies fall on their face, but we'll see. One thing that I'm super interested in as well is, will any of this have any impact on fantasy football and gambling? It's obviously going to have an impact on gambling. Just straight up betting on games will absolutely be impacted. I already spoke a little bit about how the fans are going to impact the game, how that's going to look. And as a result, some of those lines that you would normally see that are, a +3, +3.5 might go to a +4 for a team, or might come down to a +2, or, whatever the case may be. And, the question, again, you go back to the teams that have major home field advantage, or at least that's what we are told. And what we perceive, the teams like the Saints, the Seahawks, the Chiefs, you even throw in a team like the Ravens. As a result, some of those lines may bump up or down a point or two. And are those teams as good in an empty stadium? Maybe not. Could a team like the Cardinals go into Cowboy Stadium, I think they play in week 6, and get a win? Maybe they can. Now, that's just gambling, right? That's just, like I said, that's just straight up picking games. I'm sure that's going to have some impact. What it is, I don't know. I don't know that much about Vegas and how they do things. But for fantasy, I don't think much changes other than what impacts COVID has, right? You need to be more aware of team rosters, right? You need to be more conscious of following team rosters, injury reports, things like COVID-related issues, because they're going to change pretty frequently. Guys are going to get hurt, and guys are going to get COVID. That's the way things are right now in the world. Be aware of what is in your leagues. They are not they're not in an NFL bubble. Okay. So you have to be aware of what is going on in your leagues, what is what, and that's how you're going to determine which guys are the best to pick. And you got to be diligent on that kind of stuff. And then one thing I want to talk about, I mentioned this briefly, is how are you going to determine which teams are good teams, right? To me, this part of the football process, if you will, does not change. I break the season down into quarters. I've heard this from a few, analysts and former players, and that's sort of the way I started looking at football as well. And to me, the first 4 weeks are simply about coaching and talent, right? Everyone, especially in a year like this, everyone is going to be scrambling to see who they are and who they aren't, and most importantly, who they need to be. And so the first 4 weeks are just going to be about who has the best coaches and talent, who can get off to the quickest start based on that. Then the following 4 to 8 weeks, you're going to start to see adjustments, right? The real coaching takes place. The teams that are together on the same page, coupled with obviously the talent that they have, those teams will start to separate. The teams that aren't doing so well, that aren't that talented, that aren't that well coached, that aren't that disciplined, they'll start falling to the bottom. By week 10, you know definitely which teams are bad and which teams are good. There's a clear separation between everyone. And you know, for the most part, which teams are playoff bound. Every now and then, you'll still get 1 or 2 that kind of tail off at the very end. But by week 10, week 11, week 12, you know who your playoff teams are. Or at least the pool that you're going to have. You're probably going to have 1 or 2 competing for that last wild card spot. But those 8 or 9 teams, you're going to know who they are. Week 12 on, those are your true contenders. You're going to see who the true contenders are. Take a look at last year. Take a look at all the teams that separate. And some of them are obvious, right? Everyone thought Baltimore was a contender when they're 14-2. That's a no-brainer. Everyone thought the Chiefs were a contender. That's a no-brainer. The 49ers, etc. Teams like Tennessee, they were a contender last year. All it takes is for them to beat the Titans or the Chiefs, and they're in the Super Bowl. So, and you could see the route to that coming. They're hot at the right time. They're playing the right type of football in terms of running the football and playing defense. And they had a quarterback who wasn't killing them. And so they were a contender. Same thing for a team like Green Bay. Green Bay was 13-3. They had Aaron Rodgers, who many consider the best quarterback in football. I disagree. And so they're a contender. The 49ers, run game, defense, contender. Chiefs, they don't need a run game because they have Patrick Mahomes, but they could still run the football a little bit, and they had a defense. Same thing with the Ravens. So you see your contenders at the end of the year. The Saints, contenders. Guess what? All those teams at the end of the year were playing really, really good football. So it's always been like that. It always will be. That's the way football goes. And so with all of that said, let's get into some specifics, right? What else are we looking forward to? Let's start with Cam Newton. All right, let's dive in. Cam Newton and the New England Patriots. 20-year dynasty. World's falling. Tom Brady left. Dynasty's over. Relax, folks. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath, okay? First of all, let's talk about a few things. The lack of talent for the Patriots, yes, that is a thing. They lost so much from guys just sitting out, let alone just the normal year-to-year offseason. Just from guys sitting out, they lost a lot of guys, okay? Not to mention they lost the greatest quarterback of all time, Hightower, Chung. The list is long, right? That's a lot to replace. In any year, you take a look at the guys, especially the top guys that they lost. In any year, just think about one of those guys on a normal year just going down for injury. Hightower go down for injury. Or Gilmore's not gone, but Gilmore goes down for injury. Something like that. Just replacing one of those guys is difficult. Okay? They have a lot to replace. Now, here's the upside. First of all, you got Bill Belichick. Okay? That's a lot of points right there. If we're talking about 100%, that's like 60% of the pie right there. You got Cam Newton. That's another big chunk. Okay? Cam is on the verge of a comeback, a big comeback, and he's got the perfect environment to do so. The perfect environment. One, you got a bunch of players who feel slighted in an organization that already just manufactures people slighting them because they have a 20-year dynasty. I don't think there's anything to slight about the Patriots. I think that's, but hey, whatever they need to get them to win. You got a bunch of players feel slighted, especially the guys that are coming in to replace. They aren't supposed to be good, according to some of the experts out there. You got a recently injured quarterback who a lot of people were out on even before he got hurt, which makes no sense to me. And let's be honest, Bill Belichick is a great football coach, but he is petty. First of all, any of you that are thinking the Patriots were ever thinking about tanking, what are you talking about? Bill Belichick wants to make sure you know he's the best. That is dangerous. He is the Michael Jordan of coaches, the Black Mamba. There are there's one thing that Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant have in common. Bill Belichick has it in common. A lot of the great athletes have this in common. They may not say it out loud, but they want to make sure that you know that they are the best. So all their ingredients are there for them to hang yet another division banner. They just have to be able to overcome the talent deficit that they lost. And I believe with Cam Newton and Bill Belichick, they will do just that. I think Cam Newton can bring an element that Brady couldn't, obviously, with the run game. And I think he can do well enough as a passer. I don't think he's Tom Brady, but I think he's more than a capable passer. And I think he'll do well enough that Bill Belichick can coach up the rest of the team and get them to where they need to be. I think they win the division and move on from there. Now, as talent goes, what's out there, there are a ton of players out there, and we don't have time to go through all of them, right? But a few available options that were more recently mentioned. Robert Foster, wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills, formerly wide receiver of the Buffalo Bills. I don't know if he's been signed as of recording this, but he's available. Hakeem Butler's out there. Solid player. Wouldn't change life for him. Neither one of them would. However, if N'Keal Harry is indeed a first-round level talent, considering they drafted him in the first round, he would be the perfect complement to either one of those guys. Both of them are over-the-top receivers, whereas N'Keal Harry is a bit of a more big-bodied possession receiver. So Ryan Switzer is also available, but, they have Julian Edelman, so that doesn't make any sense. Tight end, you got Delaney Walker out there as an option as a vet, but he's 36, and he has been injured a lot over the last 2 years. When healthy, he is very productive, but he's not been, and he's not getting any younger. Todd Davis on the defensive side is available, as well as Alec Ogletree. And let's not forget Earl Thomas is also still out there. Marcel Darius is out there. Clay Matthews. There's a lot of guys out there that they can swoop up off the waiver wire or the free agent market and get this team. I think this team at 10-6 could win this division. I don't think the Bills are going to repeat what they did last year. I think the Bills are very good. I'm not counting on them to repeat what they did last year. The Jets are lost. The Dolphins are not ready. So I got the Patriots winning the division. The only team that stands a chance are the Bills, like I said, but we'll see. On top of all of that, you have coaching. You have the best coach in football. What coach do you trust in that division more than Bill Belichick? I don't care what team you root for. There isn't a team or there isn't a coach in that division that I trust more than Bill Belichick. I think McDermott is a good coach. I think Brian Flores is a good coach. But they are puppies compared to Bill Belichick. I don't think Adam Gase is a good coach at all. I don't think he's meant to be a head coach. But I'll save that for another pod. The Patriots just need to make it through the first few weeks. They need to get everything on the right page. As long as they come out and they're not 0-4, 0-3, something along those lines. If they can come out 2-2, really good to go 3-1, something like that, they'll be just fine. They'll win the division. I still think this is the division winner, and I want to move on to another division winner, and I want to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the greatest quarterback of all time is now down in Tampa, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. We've heard the word super team thrown around. I think that word is dangerous. It's an automatic implication of Super Bowl contender, which I do believe the Bucs to be. But it's just something about the word super team bothers me. I think the Bucs are the NFC favorites. I just hate the word super team, right? Are they loaded? Yes, they are absolutely loaded. I'm just not a fan of the word. So you won't hear me say it. Let's just say that. So having put that on the table, what are realistic expectations? Well, to me, anything short of a solid NFC Championship game appearance is a complete failure. That means I expect this team, they are my pick to go to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. I have the Chiefs and the Bucs meeting in the Super Bowl. However, if they don't make the Super Bowl, I don't think it's a failure. Now, if they go out in the first round, I do. To me, Tom Brady, listen, Tom Brady has 6 Super Bowls, okay? He doesn't need 7 to be the GOAT. He is the GOAT. America. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, okay? And so to me, I just want to see him turn the team into a contender. That's all I need to see. They don't have to win the Super Bowl. They don't have to go 14-2, 16-0, and blow everyone out in the playoffs. I just need to see them be a contender. It's been 12 years since the Bucs made the playoffs. Everyone is telling me how bad the Patriots' weapons were, how loaded this Tampa Bay team is. And listen, I agree with all points made. But I need to see the Bucs contend. They don't have to win the Super Bowl, and this is why. He's 43 years old, and he's on a brand new team with no offseason. It's just too big of a stretch to say it is Super Bowl or bust just because he's the greatest of all time. Football is a difficult sport to win a Super Bowl. The only thing that would put a little bit of ire on anything that Tom Brady has done is if he goes out and just has a complete dud of a season. Otherwise, it's settled for me. It's quite simple. So what does Tom Brady need to do to meet those expectations? As if he needs me to tell him. Well, I'm going to. It's quite simple, really. He just needs to be Tom Brady. What people don't understand about this move, the people that are constantly berating Tom Brady, he's 43 and Tom will help. Tom has already improved the Bucs just by walking through the door, just by being in the building. That level of experience and knowledge itself is an instant boost to a team, especially a team with that kind of talent, right? The talent around him is going to win him 8 games. They won, I think, 7 or 8 last year with 41 turnovers. Hello. I heard this stat, I believe it was on First Things First. I could be wrong about exactly where I heard this stat. But the last team to have 41 turnovers was an 0-16 Cleveland Browns. Think about that. This team won 7 or 8 games with 41 turnovers. If he turns the ball over 20 times, they'll win 10 games. Easily. So just having that around is going to do wonders for the Bucs. The question is, can Tom Brady win the 4 or 5 games they need him to win? That's going to get them to 13-3, 14-2. Can he win those games? The ones where it's like, you know what, Mike Evans is having an off day, Leonard Fournette fumbled the ball twice, and our defense gave up 34 points. Can you get us to 37? Can you do it? Just once. And you're probably going to need 4 or 5 of those games. That's all he needs to do. The young guys around him will carry the load most of the way. And when he needs to bring it home, he will. Now, speaking of carrying the load, Baker Mayfield's team needs to do the same for him. And for slightly different reasons, I'll talk about that coming up next. So the Browns were humbled last year. And so was I, admittedly. I was all in on the Browns last year. I must admit, I was very wrong. And I'm all in on the Browns yet again. Oh boy, here we go. So you may ask, why is this year any different? It's not any different for the Browns, really, right? They've been bad for years. Guess what? If the Browns are bad again, they will just go on being the Browns. That's all. But it's different for Baker Mayfield individually and a few other guys. Odell Beckham. You can throw Jarvis Landry in there. Maybe start talking about Nick Chubb. What's he doing in Cleveland? What a waste. For Baker Mayfield, perhaps the most promise of any of the quarterbacks the Browns have drafted in the last billion years that they've been in this mess is do or die time. New coach, new regime, etc. If it don't go well this year, Baker, you're out of there. And I don't think Baker is capable of carrying a team. There aren't very many quarterbacks that are capable of carrying a team. There are a few, right? You know, you obviously you think about your guys like your Patrick Mahomes, your Aaron Rodgers, your Tom Brady's in his prime. I don't think Tom Brady can carry a team right now. And on the other extreme, right, you have your quarterbacks who are a detriment to their team. I'm not going to say any names because I'm not even going to start that. But then you have your guys somewhere in the middle that are neither a detriment to your team, but they can't carry the team either. But what they can do is lead a good team. And I think Baker can be a leader of the Browns. I don't necessarily think he can be, well, he's by position, he's their best player, I suppose. Although I think your best talent is obviously Myles Garrett, but you get the point. I think Baker can lead a good team and not be the necessarily the best player. I don't think he is their best player. And again, he certainly hasn't been. But if Baker truly had a wake-up call last year, and this year is going to be truly different for him in terms of mentality and approach, he can absolutely lead this team where they need to go. What you have to ask is, can all this talent come together in one of the most unlikely situations with the COVID issues once again? I reiterate, it's a very unconventional offseason. And in this case, a new coach as well. It's a tough adjustment. But there's so much talent on this team that as they are figuring things out, they will be able to win games on talent alone. Again, I talk about breaking the season down into quarters. The first four or 5 weeks, can they get to 3-2 at worst, maybe 4-1 if they're really, really lucky and good, just based on the talent, because it's going to take some time to work out the kinks. But I think they will be able to win more games this year to start with on talent alone. As with the new head coach coming in, that's a real head coach. As they progress through the season, they'll be able to figure some things out. And yet, with all that talent, it's possible that they aren't even the most talented team in their own division, because that would be the Baltimore Ravens. Now, when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, here's the thing. No one cares about the regular season anymore. You've seen it 2 years in a row now. They started slow, and they caught fire the year prior to last in the regular season. Lamar Jackson inserted for Joe Flacco, and they were ousted quickly in the playoffs by the Chargers. In embarrassing fashion, might I add. They hit the ground running last year in full sprint, only to be ousted quickly again, this time by the Titans. And again, let's be perfectly honest, it wasn't that close. It was pretty ugly. It wasn't nearly as close as the score indicated. And so what's going to happen this year when, by all accounts that I hear, and to my eye, my own personal eye, they have the best roster in the entire NFL? What growth will we see in Lamar Jackson? Or will there be the same problems as the last 2 years? Because if that's the case, you know the questions are coming. It won't take until the playoffs this time for it to come. Especially if they don't come out the gates blazing like they did last year. They don't have to start the season, 8-0. But if they come out 4-4 or something like that, they're going to start asking questions. And even if they do come out, it really, the only thing that's going to do is increase the pressure to do it in the postseason, because we've seen them do the same thing for 2 years and flame out. So in order to do so, the defense will need to repeat its performance or get pretty close at least to what they did last year. They lost a few pieces, but they added a few pieces. Calais Campbell in, Earl Thomas out. And maybe Earl Thomas was a bigger problem than we all originally thought. So we'll see how the defense holds up compared to last year. And then offensively, obviously they were one of the most explosive offenses last year, but their defense was exceptional as well, and that contributed to their offense. So you can argue they played hand in hand. Obviously they do to a degree, but still they had to go out and do it on both sides of the ball, and they will need to do it again. And speaking of doing things again, the Chiefs are looking to go to the Super Bowl again, and we are going to talk about the Chiefs next. All right, America. Let me say one thing. I made one declaration earlier. I will always do this when I feel like there is a fact that needs to be shouted out to the masses. So I'm doing it again. America, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football not named Tom Brady. Yes, he is better than Russell Wilson. He is better than, I think, Drew Brees. He is better than Aaron Rodgers. He is better than Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, whoever you want to put in there, other than Tom Brady, he is the best. Tom Brady to me is the GOAT. And until Tom Brady walks off the field, he's the best quarterback in football. So I don't care what he looks like this year. He's the best. Setting him aside, it is Patrick Mahomes. And he is setting a blazing trail to try to catch Tom Brady. And this is not prisoner of the moment, okay? Obviously, a lot of you don't know me just yet, but you will. I have been on this train since before the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes. You can check my Twitter. I tweeted it the night they started Alex Smith over Patrick Mahomes, which, listen, it's not to say what they did was a mistake. That's not my point. But my point is I said that night, throw Patrick Mahomes in and watch. Just watch. And yet, here we are. But hey, I'm not getting off the train. It is what it is. He's the best quarterback in football. And to me, it's not all that close. And so the thing to think about is the Chiefs could already be working on a three-peat if the ball bounces differently, so to speak, against New England with the offsides, right? I think they would have gone on to beat the Rams, but, that's just pure speculation. Maybe last year plays out differently, even if they do beat the Rams and they still end up with one. But you get the point. He is easily going to be the favorite to win MVP. He should have been or would have been there last year if in the race, if not for the injury. Listen, Lamar Jackson had an outstanding year. He deserved MVP. I think he would have won it, but Mahomes would have been in the race for sure. I think if he remains healthy for a season, it's a no-brainer. He's going to be in the running this year, obviously. And I think this might be another year that he grabs another one. Not to go unmentioned with the Chiefs, though, is head coach Andy Reid. Obviously, all the other weapons, but this is about those two in particular, who is an excellent, excellent football coach. Finally got the proverbial monkey off his back and got his cheeseburger. All the pressure is off now for Andy Reid. And I think that's dangerous for the NFL. Their roster is intact, certainly for the next 2 years, next few years. And as long as Mahomes is the quarterback, they are going to be contenders. That is a fact. And I mentioned the Chiefs' weapons. Their roster is like a created team on Madden, especially offensively, right? The list of names goes on. And I talked about rookies making an impact earlier. They obviously have a rookie running back who, by all accounts, will put on the show this year, in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. More toys for Mahomes. More toys for Mahomes. There you go. All this really, it just begs the question, really, is a repeat possible? Is it tough to repeat? Yes, obviously. But is it possible? Sure. No more Tom Brady for the Chiefs. Say what you want, but Tom Brady was a factor. If the Patriots would have gotten out and gotten some weapons for Tom Brady and kept Tom Brady, they would have been a factor this year, no doubt. The Chargers aren't going to be very good in their own division. Neither are the Raiders, I don't think. I think the Raiders will be better. A lot of people have the Raiders making the playoffs. I'm not ready to go there yet. The only team in their division, I believe, that will get any games off of them are the Broncos. I believe the Broncos will get one at home in Denver. They are the only ones that have some level of home field advantage still intact. So I'm a believer in the Broncos big time. But again, that's for another pod. Otherwise, I think they're going to absolutely smoke their division. So now you have to go through the playoffs. And okay, so let's just look at last year's teams, right? The Patriots, the Ravens, the Titans, the Bills, and the Texans. I think only two of those teams could compete, and that's the Ravens and the Titans. We saw them last year, played the Ravens in the regular season. We saw the Titans beat the Chiefs in the regular season, and have the lead on the Chiefs in in Arrowhead in the playoffs in the AFC Championship game. So they can compete. I think the Ravens can compete. But you got two teams, so you got three. I think there are a few other teams that might be able to compete this year, but that's a different story. The rest of the teams, though, are not close. And so who's going to stop them in the AFC is my ultimate point from getting to the Super Bowl. One of those teams likely is going to knock the other out. Your worst case scenario is you have to play both of them, but considering you're probably going to be one of the top 2 seeds, likely going to be the number 1 seed. You're not going to have to play both. And so the Browns are the only team talent-wise, I think, in the AFC that could compete. But that's a long ways from now. We have to see what they look like as a product. I think on paper, in terms of rosters, they can compete. But otherwise, this is going to be another run to the Super Bowl, this time to Tampa for the Chiefs. And another run I want to talk about, the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans last year had a magical run to the AFC Championship and had the eventual champs on the ropes briefly. And I believe they made a fatal mistake. And I think it's going to sound crazy to some people. I think it's going to sound crazy to say, but I believe they committed too hard to Derrick Henry. The Titans were a hammer last year, and hammers do one thing and one thing only. They bang on stuff. You bang on stuff with a hammer. You hammer in nails, you bang on wood, whatever. The Titans were absolutely running through the NFL with Derrick Henry and made no attempts to do otherwise, and I believe that was their mistake. They were never going to go into Arrowhead to get the Chiefs into a 20-17 football game. That just wasn't going to happen. The Chiefs simply scored too many points. And the Titans got the lead and just attempted to do what they did to the Chiefs, what they did to the Ravens and a lot of other teams. But you have to realize that's a different quarterback. Lamar Jackson, I still think, was struggling as a thrower last year. And I also think he was pressing a little bit. And so that was different. Tom Brady had nothing, absolutely nothing to work with offensively in terms of weapons. The Chiefs are loaded, and they have the best quarterback in football. It is a totally different circumstance. And so to me, there was no adjustment. That's a different offense. And all of a sudden, after grinding, you look up, Derrick Henry has 20, 25 carries, and you're down 10-plus points. Because the Chiefs went up and down the field, up and down, and fast. So I think that was their fatal mistake. I don't think it's because Ryan Tannehill couldn't do it. I don't necessarily think Ryan Tannehill is a great quarterback, but I think he is one of those guys that could lead a team to a Super Bowl given all the things lined up around him. And I think they had it, and I think they still have an opportunity for it. And I think he can be that guy. But they needed to utilize him more and earlier. They tried to do it, but by then the Chiefs had already opened up. It was too late. Now, Derrick Henry just got paid, and in order for this in order for it to be worth it, he's got to get more involved in the passing game, which sounds crazy considering what his game is. I know that's not his game, but they've got to do it somehow. In his career, he had 15, 17, 18, and 24 receptions last year, 24 being the highest that he's ever had. Now, the playing time the first few years wasn't quite what it should have been. He was behind DeMarco Murray. He was with Deion Lewis, whatever that's supposed to be. But 24 catches, even for a guy of his size, is just not enough. It's got to be close to 40. Can you give him 1 or 2 more screens a game? If he's at 24, can you give him 1 or 2 more screens a game, a swing pass? We've seen him take it to the house. He's got the speed to do so. We've seen him take a couple of 99-yarders or 90-yarders to the house. He can do so. I know he's not Kamara or Christian McCaffrey, but he's got to be more. He can't just be a hammer. When he's on the field, you're running the football. And if you don't run it, he's not an option in the pass game. Listen, I know he doesn't have the best hands. I know he's not the most agile, but he has to be more involved somehow in the pass game. I don't think hammering him 30 times up the middle not only is not good for his long term, but I don't think it's going to score them enough points to beat a team like the Chiefs. You could beat a team like the Ravens like that because that's also how they play. So if you can beat them at their own game, then that's, you're like versus like. The Chiefs don't do that. The other thing is A.J. Brown also emerged last year, and I thought he'd be a difference in the playoffs for them for that reason. That way they didn't have to hammer Derrick Henry 30 times. I think they needed more Tannehill and Brown, Jonnu Smith early on in the game. Once they had the lead, they didn't go for it. They tried to sit on it. And that's something, you're cooking with A.J. Brown. You're cooking with Jonnu Smith. You got something there, okay? Use it. And they went totally away from it. I know that's their identity. I think Mike Vrabel was an excellent coach. I think they made a fatal mistake in doing that. Now, they finally did get Jadeveon Clowney signed, which I think is a big deal. People are making a big deal about, his salary and the 3.5 sacks. First of all, if you boil pass rushing down to how many sacks did you have, you don't know what you're doing. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, even if you want to say he is an inconsistent player, what he can do at his peaks, you need that on your team. And if they have the cap space to do it, which they have more than enough, then do it. There's no downside to this. It's a 1-year deal. If he's a complete bust, okay. But chances are, most likely, he's not going to be a complete bust. In fact, he's going to be quite the opposite. The one thing that concerns me is they don't have someone opposite him to take a lot of pressure off. I think Harold Landry's a decent pass rusher. I think Jeffrey Simmons can be a good pass rusher. But let's wait and see if they're going to be star level players. Clowney to me was a no-brainer. I was just glad that we actually got him. I don't get all the uproar about the signing that some people, are up in arms about. I think he's going to be huge for the defense. Jeffrey Simmons, I think, now has a full year. Again, we'll see, but I think he's going to help out as well. Ultimately, the question is, can they top last year? Well, it's certainly not an easy bar to clear, right? You're talking about being one of the 4 remaining teams in the entire NFL. It's not easy to do. And if you're talking about topping it, then that means getting to the Super Bowl, meaning you have to be one of 2 of 32 teams. And this time you're going into the season with expectations. There were no expectations last year. This time you're going in with expectations. There is no true offseason this year. So no fine-tuning, not to the degree that you're used to. I think teams that have been together will do best this year. And this team has been together now for a few years. Most of the core is intact. So, yeah, I do have the Titans as legitimate contenders in the 2020 season. All right, and that'll do it for the first episode of the Simple Sports Podcast for 2020. Episode 2 will be out I will try to get it out tomorrow. It will likely be out Thursday. As I said, we'll have some NBA stuff in there, but mostly we'll be talking about fantasy football, some strategies for the upcoming week. I may save the fantasy stuff for Saturday, or maybe we'll just do 2. Why not just do 2? We'll do one for Thursday on the showdown, and then we'll do another episode for the full Sunday strategy. So stay tuned for that. One will be out Thursday, the other will be out Saturday. You guys enjoy. Take care. I'll see you all in the next episode. Peace.